Okay. Well, welcome, Kara Goodrich.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
we're so excited to have you perform on the Bach and Brillhart performance at the Kimmel Center on January 17th and 19th. So, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled.
And I thought this was a good opportunity for our audiences to learn a little bit more about you and also about this cantata specifically. So if you want to maybe talk a little bit about your training and what you do on a regular basis, that would be great.
Absolutely. Well, it seems only appropriate to start by saying that Jeff Brillhart was a huge musical influence on me from childhood. So, Jeff is the conductor and organist at Bryn Mawr Presbyterian Church, and that happened to be where my mother sang as her church job. She's also a singer. And so I grew up under Maestro Brillhart's baton, whether that was singing with her or in the youth choirs there. And now that is the position that I hold. So I sing as the soprano at Bryn Mawr Pres with Jeff. And he has been just such an incredible mentor, both musically and professionally, personally. So big thanks to him for inviting me to do this piece. And throughout my life, when big musical moments, whether that was in high school or college, Jeff has always supported me. And so for him to think so highly of me to invite me to perform with the chamber orchestra, it's just really an honor. So I'm grateful for that. And he and I share an alma mater. We both went to Eastman in Rochester, New York. So after Eastman, which was undergrad, I went to the University of Michigan, another cold, cold place, and then moved back to Philadelphia to attend the Academy of Vocal Arts. So, neighbors with Curtis, right there around the Rittenhouse Square area, is the Academy of Vocal Arts. It's the best kept opera secret in the city, and it looks just like a brownstone, but it's got a beautiful theater in there, and I did my operatic training there. And professionally, singing in Philadelphia is my favorite, obviously because I get to come home and sleep in my own bed at night, but especially because we have such a vibrant cultural hub here in Philadelphia, and we're so lucky to have such thriving arts in this city. So that's why I decided to make Philadelphia my professional home as well as my personal home. And anytime I get to sing in Philadelphia, it's always a thrill.
So you sing opera, and
Yes.
yet you also do a lot of oratorio and church singing and early music singing.
Yes.
So I'd like to hear a little bit about like how you navigate, changing from maybe when you sang Mimi versus, a Bach cantata.
It all comes down to a couple things. But at the heart of anything you sing, we're so lucky as singers that we get text, right? So at the heart of everything that you sing is this text. It's either poetry or a libretto, whether it's an oratorio and a sacred religious text, as the one that we're doing next weekend is, and really connecting to that text and being able to emotionally convey it to the audience. So before I ever even sing a note, I always translate, read through whatever I'm singing, and just think about it. Think about how I would like for the text to come across, and that will then influence the artistic choices. When you have oratorio, you tend to have a lot more repeated words than with opera. So opera, depending on the era, tends to be more through composed. Specifically, Puccini was very through composed. It's a story. You're not singing the same words over and over. Whereas in Ich habe genug, you're singing I have enough over and over again. So you have to listen then to what Bach does and decide what each time you say I have enough means, right? And how it feels with the music, how it feels with the accompaniment. And it's a different level of sensitivity that's required because of the nuances. So when you're singing opera, you have I don't want to say freedom because there is also freedom in Baroque music, but it's this outpouring of drama that's written in. With oratorio, you have to create that atmosphere with the text. Otherwise, it just becomes repetitive if it's not emotive in the voice. So I really love singing oratorio. One of my favorite things to sing is Handel's Messiah. And I know that every year it's done and that's, some professional musicians think, why can't we do something other than Messiah? Well, guess what? Because Messiah was fantastic.
It is. I never tire of that. It's sort of like the right, like Brandenburg, um,
Yeah.
Messiah. Like there are those staples in repertoire that there's a reason why, they are so beloved. You just
Yep.
can't get enough of it, and it seems like there's something particularly, I think, with Bach. There, you always find something new. At least I do. Like, oh, I
Mhm.
never really heard like some of those inner voices that just kind of pop out that maybe I hadn't noticed before.
Oh, for sure. And he writes for instruments and the voice the same, if that makes sense. He's not writing a vocal line and an instrumental line. He's just writing two instrumental lines that he wants the voice to be able to emulate the instrument and the instrument to be able to emulate the voice. So it's its own beast to navigate in terms of specifically this piece. It's not a high tessitura for soprano. It was originally for a man, a bass. And I think with that lower voice part, some of the tessitura is more exciting when you get these higher notes. It only goes up to a G, right? So it's not very high, which for a soprano, we we have to then think about the emotion as the exciting thing. We can't rely on high notes or right as the exciting thing that the audience is grasping onto. It's how to fill each word and again bring that text across. But when you think about that original setting and hearing a man sing these G's, it's a higher tessitura for that man, so it sounds more thrilling in that voice part. And that's very interesting that Bach then didn't, you know, add some high notes for the soprano. He really stood by that. No, he really believed this is enough.
Well put. I the second aria, the Schlummert ein, I prefer it with the soprano. There's just something very lullaby like that I find so compelling.
Yeah,
That I think it's very special.
absolutely. The lilting line that it's just so gorgeous. And I love the lower registration that you can have some mix in the voice. So it's you don't want to go full chest voice and be belting Schlummert ein, and it really is like a lullaby, and you kind of sing with that sottovoce, that beautiful tenderness that you would if you were trying to not wake a child. It's beautiful. I also love that movement.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
And then the third movement, go ahead and tell us about the Ich freue mich.
I love the third movement. So it when I first heard this piece, I was thinking, wow, this is, this whole I listening from, Ich habe genug, then schlummert ein, and I'm thinking, wow, this is so calm. And then you hear the last movement. Um, it's so fun. It's so fun to sing. It really does just exuberate the joy, but because it's so much lower in the voice, it does have a little bit of that. I don't want to say sinister, but it sounds like it's a challenge, right? Like I will be joyful
I
in that kind of it's a serious joy. It's not a carefree da 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 da. It's da 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 da. It's determined joy, if that makes sense.
rooted. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's rooted joy. It's not carefree.
I love that.
Yes.
I love that. And so exciting. Have you sung a lot of Bach?
I would say not a lot, but I've sung my fair share. The first Bach that I ever performed was the Magnificat, and that was with the Rochester Symphonic Orchestra when I was in my undergrad at Eastman. And I just fell in love with that Quiara Spexit. And the conductor was hearing auditions, and I remember I was only a sophomore, and I got a call from the artistic director of the group saying the conductor would like you to come back in to sing this appendix, the Virgayese. And it's an excerpt that's at the end of the Magnificat. They don't always do it, but it's a soprano and baritone bass duet, and it's very quick, very fast moving. And so they said, we know that you can sing this beautiful Quieta Spexit. Would you mind showing us if you can sing this fast duet? And basically, if you can do it, you're gonna sing this. So this pressure of, oh my gosh, I gotta get these runs, and learning that duet in 24 hours, and then going the next day and singing it for the conductor. That was my first experience with Bach. So
It worked out well for you, though, yes?
yes, I am grateful. But yeah, I love Bach. I don't sing Bach every day, so this is a treat.
And I do enjoy a full-throated Bach.
Oh, absolutely. There is something to be said about the crossing over between opera, oratorio, art song. When you hear these people talk about the idea of, well, this is just how I sing. A flexible voice can sing everything, and it can sound right. You don't have to change your technique to the point of manufacturing a sound. You just have to use your instrument in a different way. So I'm not singing Bach operatically. I still have an operatic full-throated sound, but I'm not singing Bach like I'm singing Mimi. You are able to take the nuance of one thing and really run with that, as opposed to trying to fit pieces to your voice. You fit your voice to pieces by just gracefully honoring the style without tampering yourself down.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I would probably add to that for our audience that often this Bach is performed with Baroque orchestras that have historical instruments that are slightly lighter in volume. And this performance will be with modern instruments, so you actually need a full-sized voice to cut through, especially that middle voice that one would
Yeah.
expect.
When
So
when you're up there as a soprano, when you're up there standing on the same level as the orchestra, the when you're in an opera, you're on the stage and the orchestra is in the pit below you. when you're singing with an oratorio or a chamber orchestra, you're all on the same level. And so acoustically, the sound is hitting the audience's ears all at the same time. They don't have that barrier of the pit and the stage cutting that orchestra off. So there's an advantage to being above the orchestra because then the voice just soars over. When you're standing all on the same level, your voice really becomes one of the instruments. And especially in this lower tessitura, which if people come to the concert, they'll hear, I'm singing in the staff the entire time. There are no notes above the staff. There are no ledger lines. There's a ledger line below. I sing a B below, but in terms of in in the staff, that is the middle voice. And for, did I cut out for a second there?
Nope, you're great.
Okay, that's the middle voice. And the middle voice is sometimes the most treacherous part to navigate in terms of mixing, using chest, how much head you're bringing down so that you can still cut through. And you really have to focus that resonance in a way that really can pierce the hall as a voice because you've got the cellos that have a very similar timbre to the voice, and then you've got those low frequencies competing with your voice. So finding the right resonance in that low part is really important. So, and especially on a vowel like shlo, shlo is not a very resonant vowel. Instead of something like shli, you can really hear the high frequencies in that vowel as opposed to shlo sits lower. So it's definitely a challenge to find the perfect balance, but I'm excited to get into the space, get into the rehearsals next week and find it with Jeff and the group.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Perlman Theater is a very delightful theater for residents and carry that, I think from an audience standpoint, you can hear everyone at every time. So that, and you're very familiar with that theater.
The Perlman is a place where you can go ahead and be brave and sing a pianissimo and people and trust that people will be able to hear you. That's so it's a gorgeous space. It's similar actually to a theater that they have at Eastman, the Hatch Hall, which is that same layout where you have the seating on the sides as well and the beautiful wood. So it's I love singing in the Perlman.
It gives a nice warm sound.
Yes, yes. And no matter where you're sitting, you feel like you're right in the sweet spot. So I've heard multiple people say, "Oh, I always sit here. It's the sweet spot." And then someone else will say, "Oh, I always sit somewhere else. It's the sweet spot." I just think that the whole hall is great.
I think so too. And sometimes I like to vary where I sit, and I like to try different places around. And it, there's no dead spots, so to speak, like in some theaters.
Right.
It is true that if I'm closer to the cello double basses, like that's a little bit more prevalent than sitting like almost behind the violins, but it's a beautiful sound no matter where you sit. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
well, if there is there anything else you'd like to tell us about you or Bach or the upcoming performance?
I just really, I've really loved learning this piece. It's been a fun challenge to try to sing like an oboe or sing like with the phrasing of an instrumentalist and that idea that when you're thinking about melismas and we have it drilled into us as singers, don't breathe in the middle of a word, don't breathe in the middle of a word. But Bach writes in a way that if you don't breathe in the middle of a word, you're not getting through that page. And so it's really been fun to go through and find those places. My husband is a cellist, and so we have been practicing together. I gave him a copy and he plays the continuo part and I sing. And so it's been really fun to practice in that way and just run through it together and get a sense of the interludes and how the harmonies fit together. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. And I'm so grateful to get to sing with the chamber orchestra.
We're thrilled to have you and looking forward to seeing you. What's it, next week?
Next week.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.